Hi everyone, I wanted to make a new video that's not about orcs sadly because I got a brutalis dreadnought, so I wanted to make a video about dreadnoughts. Because what is a dreadnought but a miserable pile of filth? No, let me explain what a dreadnought is, but instead of just talking specifics, let me tell a little story about Steve the Space Marine. He'll be over here. Steve was a man. He was actually a child who got abducted by the Space Marine when he was a child. They took him up to their flying fortress monastery and trained the child in the art of the Space Marine. This included getting a gene sample of a Space Marine put into him so that he would evolve and become this transhuman being. This is how you create a Space Marine. That's not important for Steve though, because Steve soon became a Space Marine. He was of age and he was supposed to pick up the mantle to shoot people with his big mighty gun. First, he had the many tough years of being a Space Marine scout, where you have to prove yourself that you are indeed worthy of the proper power armor so that you can become a true Space Marine. Also, we're talking the old school Space Marines, not the new Primaris ones yet. I will talk about those later. Those will have a side note later on. Steve was an original chunky marine, an original Space Marine, where they were as broad as they were tall. Yes. Anyways, back to Steve. Steve was a scout, and he quickly perfected the ability to scout. He could scout. He had eyes for scouting, ears for hearing, nose for sneering, and he was very good. He was a great shot. He overall did very good. He did so good that they decided, yo, Steve, are you ready to become a Space Marine like us, your brothers and chaplains and sergeants in the Adeptus Astartes chapter of your choosing, which is this chapter which we are right now. We are the Hawk Lords. And Steve was like, sure bro, I would gladly become a Hawk Lord Space Marine now that I've been a Hawk Lord scout for so long. Oh. They were like, this is big celebration for us. And they threw a maddening party as Space Marines are known to do. And by maddening party, I meant they prayed to the Emperor and maybe flagellated themselves a bit to celebrate that Steve had now become a Space Marine. Steve had a very long and wonderful career, shooting left, right, and center, hitting everything. He was in fact quite a good shot, as you were told when he was a scout. However, one day, when fighting the mighty Drukhari, he stepped on a landmine which catapulted him right into a Drukhari Talos, which ripped him limb from limb and deposited him in front of a wretch who cut him into smithereens. But he still, with his mighty tongue, he managed to drag himself halfway back to safety, only then to be stomped on by a Titan's little toe. But he wasn't dead yet, because this was Steve we're talking about, and Steve was a mighty man. A G.I. Joe type character. After the battle, they found Steve and decided, oh my goodness, instead of extracting his gene seed, he's still alive. And he was still alive, in fact. His kidneys had survived, his brain had survived, his eye had survived, half an ear had survived, his gonads had not survived. Other parts survived as well, enough to form a little bit of a Space Marine, but enough to keep him alive through sheer anger and determination. The Space Marine doctor, he is a surgeon by the way, scooped him up and ran him in and put him in a bio tank of sorts to keep the remains of Steve alive. What happened then was this bio tank was incorporated into the shell of a big walkie stonky boy. This stonky boy then was fitted with audio cables and visors and ways so that Steve could not only see but also communicate with his fellow Space Marine in a cool, sexy robot voice.
Accept our dominion!
Steve became a dreadnought. In his right hand, he had a power claw, or a gatling, or a las cannon, depending on what you want your dreadnought to look like. And in his left hand, he had another weapon of choice. So, ultimately, the takeaway is, what is a dreadnought? A dreadnought is if a Space Marine not really dies, but close enough to death that they can't be recuperated back into a Space Marine, they can be put in a shell. Basically, it's a life support unit where you add guns. So, if you go to your local hospital, to the life support unit, with forks and knives, with tape you can attach them to the cubicles, and that's how you create a dreadnought. Yes. Dreadnoughts are mighty beings and there exist many different versions of them. There's Redemptor dreadnoughts and dreadnoughts and ironclad dreadnoughts and ballisticus dreadnoughts and furioso dreadnoughts, and now the newest one, the brutalis dreadnought, which is, I have heard, brutal. Steve was now a dreadnought. He was a tin can man with a tin can plan, and he decided to go on a little bit of a rampage. Through centuries of life, he helped his brothers fight left, right, and center in his new empowered and awesome tin can form. He killed orcs and Drukhari and everyone else. He was really great. 10,000 years later, he still lived where his brothers had died. That's a benefit of being a dreadnought. You live very long lives sometimes, if you're lucky and don't get destroyed. For example, see Bjorn the Fell-Handed, one of the original Space Wolves that was during the Horus Heresy and still lives now. Because of age and wisdom, and if you have lived long enough, you become a venerable dreadnought, which is the sign that you are a guy who has a lot of smarts, who has lived a long time, who is thus very wise, because Space Marines believe with age comes wisdom, and for Steve it was no exception. He was now the mightiest venerable Hawklord dreadnought man in a tin can with a plan. Nowadays, with the Primaris, they have come in, they have taken over. What happens there? Well, since Primaris are easily replaceable than a regular Space Marine, and they're stronger and better, their dreadnoughts are also stronger and better, faster. Here does include the Redemptor dreadnought and the ballisticus dreadnought, I think that's called, and the brutalis dreadnought. And those three dreadnoughts are usually run by Primaris Marines in the same condition as Steve was. He was in horrible shape, terrible shape. However, as we all know, a bunch of you probably don't know because I haven't explained this in another video, every robot part has a machine spirit. A machine spirit is basically the little god of that machine, the little soul of the machine, and it can be malicious or it can be benign, it can be nice, it can be gentle. For most dreadnoughts, they have tended to be rather gentle. However, for the new Primaris dreadnoughts, the Redemptor, the Brutalis, and stuff like that, they are not. They are angry. The machine spirits are pissed. That means now it works more like actual life support. It keeps the Primaris Space Marines' liver and kidney and everything else that the destroyed body needs to function alive while he goes on an absolute maddening psychopathic rampage and kills everything. However, because the machine spirit is so angry, it will burn his remains basically to a charred husk until there's nothing in there. In that case, we just take out the remains and replace them with a new Primaris that's been damaged. So, what is the Brutalis Dreadnought, and why did I get so excited when I got it? Well, the Brutalis Dreadnought is basically the cat of Dreadnoughts. It is angry, it is aloof, it has claws, and it goes rawr when it charges into combat and rips you limb from limb. I'm very excited to paint it in the color scheme of Pom Pom Pudding, because who likes pudding as much as a person physically can't chew, and you don't need to chew a pudding. So dreadnoughts, obviously dreadnoughts, and people in life support just fucking love pudding. Yes. Thank you, everyone. Next video will be about orcs, I'm sure, because I'll record it right now.